Well, welcome everybody to another episode of Four Quarters. Jonah Barbin. We've got Sam Levine here. Very exciting, Sam. Our second episode on YouTube. We survived one.
Made it through the first one. I'm excited for the second. I'm excited for the next couple. It's the last one was fun, so I'm looking forward to it again today.
Yep, love being on camera. No Arjun today. He'll be back on the radio tomorrow, and then all three of us will be on our YouTube very soon. And the skies have cleared up behind me. I was telling Sam, it was really June gloom here in Los Angeles. And even last episode, which we filmed in July, just a week ago, it was super cloudy. But I think this totally changes the context of everything. So this will make the debate even better. This will make our takes even better. We got the sun out here, not out in New York, but hopefully, Sam, you can feel it through me. Let's jump right into the first quarter, right? And we have the MLB trade deadline. It is creeping up now officially in the second half. We're on the other side of the All-Star break, and we're starting to see these critical series coming up, Sam, of which teams are going to be buyers and sellers. So before we even talk about a player, do you have a team or a few teams in mind that are definitely buying or definitely selling? Hit me.
Well, first I want to talk about the teams that are kind of fringe, buyers, sellers kind of guys. And we talk about the New York teams a lot, but the Yankees and Mets, I'm really curious to see what they do. The Mets they're fully Metsing. If you watched last night, their game against the Dodgers, just an error on Pete Alonso, let the go ahead run in, and then Brett Beatty drops an infield pop up. They're in full Mets choke mode that they usually reach around now and in the summer. So a team that was supposed to be, the one of the World Series favorites now seriously looking like they're out of contention. So I'm curious to see Steve Cohen, obviously very outspoken guy, probably the most outspoken owner in baseball. Is he gonna go for it? Buy, he spent all this money, biggest payroll in the MLB. Is he gonna buy? Try and make their team better, give them a push to the playoffs, make a wild card? Is he going to sell, kind of give up, try and restart a little bit, or is he going to stay put? And the same thing goes for the Yankees. They they just with a win last night got back out of last place where it was the latest they'd been tied for last place in a season since I think 1992, which which is before like half the roster was even born. So not a good stat to hear. So, I as a Yankees fan, I want to hear your thoughts about this, Jonah, as well. I I don't know what I want them to do. I don't know if I want them to go try and go for it and buy and give up some of their farm system because frankly, I don't think this is the year. I even if we have Aaron Judge back, if this season has proved anything, it's that the Yankees are a bad baseball team without Aaron Judge. And baseball is not a sport where one guy can single-handedly win you a World Series. You can have the best basketball player in the world can go out and drop 45 a game, and that's going to make a difference. But baseball player gets four at-bats a game. You can only do so much with those four at-bats. So even with Aaron Judge back, I don't know if they're a contender. I'm not sure if they're a team that I want to go out and mortgage their farm system for a couple months of a player who probably isn't going to do the trick. What do you think?
The Yankees should be buyers 100%. And not just for this season, but for the next three seasons, because the Yankees are going, their window is closing. It inevitably is. They just signed Aaron Judge to a 9-year deal. The guy's 31 years old. Cole is in the fourth year of his 9-year deal. Giancarlo Stanton, not getting any younger. And a guy who could, again, we talked about, he struggled, but lately in his last, 10 games driven in 16 runs or something like that, last 15 games, he is picking it up a little bit. You look at guys like that. You look at Harrison Bader, you look at DJ LeMahieu, Anthony Rizzo, all the guys that this team is built around are essentially aging besides a Anthony Volpe or maybe a Gleyber Torres, which the jury's still out on them. So I would buy from a Yankees perspective because the window is closing. Look at pitching too. Rodon, Severino, Cortez, all these guys are guys who are aging. These are guys who have dealt with injury. I don't think you can go back to a 2016 this time, where we've talked about this a lot on Four Quarters. Can we go back to a 2016 where the Yankees sell off? They probably miss the postseason, maybe even make the postseason with the fact that it's expanded now. And then next year really contend. But that was a much younger team. there were so many pieces. Aaron Judge was part of that team, and he was one of those young cores, but he is not a young piece of this team anymore. He's the most important part of the team, but he's not the young piece. So if I was the Yankees, I would go out and make a move. Now, I understand the two big names on the market, or possibly on the market, are Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani. Now, we've heard links from the Yankees to both of them, even dating back to last season when Soto was on the market. Now, Soto is younger than Ohtani. Soto has more years of control. Soto wouldn't be a rental. He's another year. And then you would think he's open to signing an extension. Ohtani is more of a question mark. And Soto addresses positional need. So if I was to say, Sam, that you would wake up tomorrow and check a notification on your phone and either say Shohei Ohtani just went to the Yankees or Juan Soto just went to the Yankees, which phone are you picking up?
I mean, at face value, I have to say Ohtani, but I'm assuming that to get Ohtani, the Yankees are probably going to have to mortgage a hell of a lot. And obviously, they're going to have to give up a lot for Soto as well. But, I was going to mention this after. I'm glad you brought up Shohei Ohtani. What team is going to be willing to do that for what is almost guaranteed to be a rental? He's going to sign next offseason a 12-year, 600, we could talk about his contract another time and what he deserves, but he's going to be on a different team next year. Whatever team trades for him, he's probably not going to stay with them unless the Dodgers do it, because I'm pretty sure he's going to the Dodgers next offseason. He's going to stay in LA. But, if you're an MLB team, if you're an MLB GM, do you mortgage however much it's going to take to get Ohtani just for, the last 3 months of him? And on that topic, what teams could do it? I could see teams like the Braves, the Rays, the Rangers, the guaranteed contenders who really want to go for it right now, they could do it. And the Braves obviously have, they're an obvious choice because they have their entire young core locked up for the next 5 years at the least. They still have a good farm system that they can trade. They can afford that, go out and get Ohtani and become the clear World Series favorites. And I wouldn't mind seeing that, for the Braves to go out and do it, even for the Rays to go out and do it, Rangers, teams like that. But outside of the top maybe 3-4 contenders, I would say it's a pretty bad idea. You have to be certain that this is the year to go for it, to trade however much it's going to take to get Ohtani, because they're going to want a couple top prospects, a couple major league ready guys. He's the best player in the world. He's the best player that we've maybe ever seen in baseball history. He's going to take a lot to get.
Yeah, well, so MLB Network, it's interesting that you brought it up like this. They categorized 6 potential Shohei suitors, and they categorized one of long-term suitors, guys who are trading for Ohtani with the thought that they'll be able to convince him to stay and sign him long-term, because that's always a thought, Sam. When you're thinking about a free agency battle and wooing a guy, well, you think, okay, we'll trade for him. He's forced to come here for 3 months. He sees how well we run our organization. Perhaps we win with him, get a taste of what it would be like to be in a San Francisco, and then he decides to come here instead of the Dodgers, right? So there are those kind of teams in my mind. And then there are the teams, like you said, the pure rentals, your Tampa Bays of the world, not going to re-sign Ohtani. They don't have that money. That's more than their whole payroll. They're not going to, Atlanta's probably not going to do it because they have so many young stars. But if they were to rent him, that would obviously make them even more in a fortuitous position to win. But I look at these teams, okay? The Dodgers. Maybe the Dodgers say, you look at this NL, the Braves are great, but the Dodgers have been playing really well lately, right? They're still in this kind of divisional race, but the Dodgers have a lot of things coming together. They just got Urias back. They get Ohtani a little early, and then they sign him. That much easier. So I could see the Dodgers doing it. I could see the Giants doing it. We know Ohtani loves the West Coast, signed with the Angels. I'm sure he would consider being a Giant, and they're building a lot too, and they've shown they're willing to spend. They tried to drop, $350 million on Correa, and just couldn't. So the Giants are willing to spend, and Judge, obviously. They tried to sign Judge, so they're looking to make their splash. And I think the Yankees would be the other team that the Yankees wouldn't be looking for this guy just for a rental. Like I said, it would be more of this idea that our window is these next 3 or 4 seasons if I'm Brian Cashman. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to make the big Yankee move for Ohtani. I'm going to show him what it's like to live in New York. He's going to be beloved there, and we're going to throw him $700 million. That would be the Yankees pitch. Now, if we're talking about rental teams, other rental teams that are a little more under the radar, and you tell me what you think, I'm going to throw out 3 team names. These were the teams that MLB Network said could be rentals. The Rangers, which you talked about, right? Again, I think they would try to sign Ohtani because they've shown in the past that they'll throw around money, but I don't think Ohtani would stay with the Rangers, to be quite honest. I think the only chance that he's not on the West Coast is that he's in New York with the Mets or the Yankees. This is a pretty crazy one, but just hear me out on it. Cincinnati, who is 1 game out of first, they're popping right now. And I mean, they have a ridiculous amount of prospects. Ridiculous. Starting with their top prospect, who will not be traded, obviously, Ellie De La Cruz. And finally, the Philadelphia Phillies, in a very similar spot that they were last year. They're getting healthier at this point, and they have a few pitchers who have been underperforming. Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola have ERAs of 4+. If those guys can clean it up, plus a Shohei Ohtani acquisition in that lineup and in that pitching rotation, I could see the Phillies coming out of the NL.
I'll tell you what I think about those teams. I talked about the Rangers before. The Phillies, they showed last year that you don't need to be, top of the league to the whole season to make the World Series. They were terrible at the beginning of last year, and obviously they turned it around, and they're looking like a very similar team now, like you said. So I mean, I could see it. I just think that the Braves in their own division, they're so much better, I feel like, than anyone else in the NL, that I don't know if the Phillies want to go for it with Ohtani. I don't know if they can comfortably say and truly believe that if we get Shohei Ohtani, we are a better team and we're a team that's going to be able to beat the Braves. I don't know.
Who was the best team in baseball last year in the regular season?
I mean, yeah, no, the Dodgers,
right? In especially a 5-game series, forget the 7-game series. Anything can happen in a 5-game series. That's your 3 best pitchers. Maybe you're only throwing 2 of your best pitchers. So if you tell me Zach Wheeler gets hot and I'm throwing you Ohtani game 1, Zach Wheeler game 2, and either game 3, depending on rest, I'm kicking you back to Ohtani, or I'm kicking in Aaron Nola, I don't feel too bad about that.
No, you have a point. I mean, listen, I think if the Phillies do it, I think they become much more of a contender instantly. And I think there's someone that the Braves, they fear. They'd have to. I think the Braves are still a better team. I still think the Braves win that series. But you're right. 5-game series, that's the beauty of baseball. Any team can win on any day. It's more true more so in baseball than any other sport. So it's I want to talk about the Reds really quickly. Like you said, my thoughts on the Reds is that they, like you said, they have an incredible farm system. Ellie De La Cruz is not going to be touched. They're an up-and-coming team. They're exciting. My thought process is that there's no way that Ohtani stays there. He's not going to sign there. It would be a rental. I think the Reds are better off using those prospects to trade for someone who is going to sign there. Because I think that the Reds could become, a destination where people look and say, hey, this is a really exciting, fun team. People are starting to care a little more back in Cincinnati. They're exciting. Ellie De La Cruz, obviously, they're in a pretty weak division. I think it's going to be somewhere where people look and say, all right, this is not a bad place to be. The Reds haven't spent money in a long time. They could be looking to give out a big contract. I think they're better off taking those prospects and trading them for someone who's more likely to stay. So I don't think that's Ohtani, but I think that sometime in the next, year, 2 years, 3 years, I think we're looking at a big free agent who's going to look at Cincinnati as a real option and might definitely end up there. And I think the Reds could end up being, pretty good for the next 5-10 years to come, hopefully. And I think that's good for baseball. When De La Cruz came up and hit for the cycle and they went on their huge win streak, it was great. Cincinnati fans loved it again. They had sellouts for the first time in forever, and it was great for the sport. I see no reason why any fan wouldn't like the Reds unless you're a fan of their rival team. But I mean, I don't care about the Reds. I was watching that win streak and it was super fun. They're an exciting team, and it was cool to see a team that hasn't been good in a long time, go on this win streak and have the fans get excited. So I think I could see them, down the road landing a big name free agent, but it's not going to be Ohtani.
And the Reds and the Pirates in the next 10 years could really be battling for that Central. They are both teams bursting with young talent. And oh my goodness, I still haven't gotten it down to actually stop the timer before it goes off. So we're about to move on, but quickly to finish on that. Yeah, the Reds and the Pirates. The Reds, Pirates, and Orioles will be teams that will be competing for the next 10, 15 seasons in my mind, some of the best farm systems in baseball. And it does, prove to say, as Michael Kay has described with how the Astros became so good, sometimes it pays to lose. If you lose a lot and you hit on your picks, you're going to have a pretty dang good team eventually. So those guys are exciting. Quickly, before we move on, because you open with this. So to bow tie it, will the Mets sell? Will Scherzer be on a different team? Will Verlander be on a different team? Any of those guys going?
I don't think they sell. I think they're going to stay put. I think they might go out and get, if anything, they're gonna get a guy or two. No one huge name. I don't think they're gonna go out and trade for Juan Soto or anything. But I don't think they're gonna sell Scherzer and Verlander. I don't think they're ready to do that. Maybe in the offseason, sure, but I don't think they're gonna do it now. And before we move on really quickly, I was just revisiting now that we've hit the All-Star break. The so-called halfway point through the season, even though it's technically a little more. I was looking back at my preseason picks, and I don't know if you remember. I missed the day that we had a whole episode about previewing down the season, but I sent you my picks to be read on air. And if you don't remember, I'm going to remind you.
Go ahead.
Here are my picks so far, which are looking pretty good. AL MVP was Shohei Ohtani. And if you don't believe me, I can pull out the receipts.
No, I
AL
remember.
Ohtani. Yep. NL MVP was Acuna. So I have the two MVP frontrunners. AL Cy Young for Amber Valdez, leads the AL in ERA. NL Cy Young Spencer Strider leads the NL in strikeouts. AL Rookie of the Year Anthony Volpe. That one's not going to hit, unfortunately. But NL Rookie of the Year Corbin Carroll, looking like an MVP candidate. So
that one's going to hit. Yep.
That could be 5 for 6 so far. And the one thing I'm not going to get, unfortunately, I don't think, World Series. I have half of it. I'm comfortable in the Braves being there. I'm not comfortable in the Yankees beating them there. But I will take that. If we're looking at what was that? Maybe that's 5 for 7 picks there, or 6 for 8. I think I did pretty well so far. So I just want to revisit that. I'm pretty happy with my picks.
Your picks are great. I missed on so many of them. I had AL MVP Aaron Judge. That's not going to happen. I had NL Rookie of the Year Jordan Walker. Not going to happen. I had AL Rookie of the Year Anthony Volpe. The only thing I might get, I think I had Shohei Cy Young. So there we go. But that might not. We'll see. We'll see. I like Garrett Cole. Not my best year of picking. And the Yankees Mets Subway Series was not my finest look. Sam.
Not looking good right now.
Well, I just wanted to believe it. It was almost a thing where I mean, you could have backed that up with plenty of stats to start the season, but it was more of just this belief, this Buck Showalter in one dugout, Aaron Boone in the other, finally coming back together, this big Yankee-Met rivalry. Not looking good right now, but who knows, maybe next season. Let's go to the second quarter. So if you missed it, a show came out, and that show is called Quarterback. It was Peyton Manning's show from Omaha Productions. And boy, Sam, he just keeps hitting. Great player on the field, and he's one of those guys I look at, media personalities who have really taken off after his career, right? I look at kind of maybe the prime example is A-Rod, because A-Rod, especially coming out of the tumultuous part of his career, really just shot up with ESPN and Fox Sports afterwards. But Peyton Manning never had, those issues on the field or when he was playing, and he has just gone straight seamlessly into media. He has the Manning cast. He has Peyton's Places, and now he produces the show called Quarterback. So what Quarterback was last season, they followed with kind of just a ton of access. Marcus Mariota, Kirk Cousins, and Patrick Mahomes. And kind of the idea, at least in my mind, was let's look at 3 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, a fringe starting quarterback, a guy who's essentially fighting for his job, a good starting quarterback, and a great starting quarterback. And that's what they did. Now let's start with Mariota, who was obviously the least featured. And then he had this whole thing that I didn't even know about where he left the team once he got benched, and then they kind of just cut him out of the documentary. But man, it was a tough ride for the guy last year. I mean, this was a guy, Sam, out of Hawaii, right, who then came to Oregon was great at Oregon, highly touted, and then was kind of middle of the road with Tennessee, bounced around to Vegas, and then found a home in Atlanta for a little bit, reuniting with Arthur Smith, but just couldn't get the job done. What's Mariota's legacy?
I mean, he's a guy that's shown flashes, everywhere he's gone. He showed flashes down in Tennessee, that great playoff comeback. Yeah, that's kind of his, I guess, his claim to fame. And then other than that, he showed flashes and with the Raiders, just coming in off the bench whenever he needs, whenever an injury. And he's been decent. He showed flashes of why he was drafted so high, why he was such a highly touted prospect coming out of Oregon. But and then obviously it looks like maybe the Falcons a chance for him to reclaim his spot as a starting quarterback. Maybe show everyone what they're missing, that he still is, has the potential to be a good NFL starting quarterback, and it just kind of didn't pan out. So he's unfortunately, he's going to go down as one of those guys who's just he's going to be a bust pretty much. He's not the biggest bust in NFL history. He still was a starter who had, he won games for the teams he played for, but for where he was drafted and how highly touted a prospect he was coming out of college, it's not a great legacy for him. And I feel bad because, the show showed he looks like a great guy. He's an easy guy to root for. But it doesn't pan out for everyone in the same way that it pans out for guys like Patrick Mahomes. And we saw we get to see the complete other end of the spectrum with Mahomes in the show as well. So, in a year where he wins the Super Bowl. So it doesn't really get much better than that. And unfortunately, for Mariota, that's kind of the low of the low when it comes to NFL quarterbacks. So it's sad, but he's going to go down as one of the bigger busts in recent NFL history.
Yeah, that's fair. And you look at that draft, the only guy who went above him was Jameis Winston, who you could argue is bust worthy too. I would say Winston probably has had a better NFL career than Mariota slightly.
I would still say he's a bust though.
Yeah. Talking about positional value, taking a quarterback at 1-1, and Jameis Winston puts up the career that Jameis Winston has, certainly bust worthy. So I was glad you almost kind of in the show, you almost kind of groaned when it was the Mariota segment, when they go to a scenic shot outside of an Atlanta practice facility, you'd be like, oh, where's the fast forward button, right? Get me back to Kirk and Mahomes. But like you said, really good guy. And I think it was great that they included it. I think to have a guy to be seeing Mahomes and winning all these accolades and what it's like to be a true star in the NFL, to what it's like to being a guy by the way, there's still plenty of guys in the NFL below Mariota or not making as much money who are more on the fringe, right? But to see a guy like Mariota who's competing for his job, very interesting there. And I love the way they handled family life, because so Mahomes had just had his second kid in the show. Kirk Cousins' kids are a little bit older, so they showed him interacting with them. And then Mariota had his baby on the show. So kind of interacting with their wives and just kind of balancing the NFL life and personal life, I think was chronicled really well by Omaha Productions as well. Now let's shift to the good quarterback, Kirk Cousins. And man, do I love this guy after watching. I was somewhat familiar with his story, didn't realize that he was drafted in the same draft just 3 rounds later as Robert Griffin III. So everybody was looking, the Redskins drafted RG3, and then they draft Kirk Cousins 3 rounds later, and everybody goes, oh my goodness, Kirk Cousins is now just going to rot on the bench. And, not luckily for him, but the way things worked out, Robert Griffin couldn't stay healthy, got his opportunity, and then eventually parlayed that into being the starter of the Vikings a couple years later. Sam, this guy is an A-tier human being and a hell of a competitor.
Yeah, no, when I was watching, I totally forgot that he was, like you said, he's in that same draft. The timeline in my head, it almost doesn't even seem right, because it feels like RG3 has gone through he's gone through a whole NFL career where he was great, one of the best quarterbacks in the league and then injury prone, and then out of the league. In the same time, Kirk Cousins is still, in what might be his prime still, and he was just drafted a couple rounds later. I totally forgot that the timeline was like that. But no, like you said, he just a hell of a competitor, another really easy guy to root for. And I love the way that the show kind of went about, like you said, showing all aspects of the game. I think it was important that they had Mariota. I think it's important that they have Kirk Cousins. He's not top 5 in the league. Actually Justin Jefferson was just asked to name his top 5, and he didn't put his own quarterback in there. But they asked Kirk Cousins about it, and his response to this also just showed a lot. It points to his character. He said, I don't want anyone to lie. He doesn't think I'm in his top 5. Okay, I don't take offense to that. And he said, hopefully this year I do some things to prove that I should be in his top 5. And like everything else in his career, Kirk Cousins is a class act. And if the show showed anything, it's that he's a true competitor, and he's a class act as well.
So are you fine with Justin Jefferson being like, this guy's not in my top 5? It's pretty easy. It might come to mind when somebody asks you to list your quarterbacks that you might say your quarterback.
I agree, but here's the thing. I think if he puts Kirk Cousins in his top 5, I think right now the question you asked me is, are you fine with Justin Jefferson putting Kirk Cousins in his top 5 when he's so clearly maybe not even a top 10 quarterback in the NFL? It's not like you're naming your top 5 and your own quarterback is number 6. You're naming your top 5 and your own quarterback's probably closer to number 11. So I don't mind it. Maybe that lights a fire under Kirk Cousins. And
You know what? That's fair. I think Sam, I think the reverse is when Tyreek Hill said Tua was the best quarterback in the NFL. And it's like, all right, man, I think you played with the best quarterback in the NFL. And spoiler alert, he's not in Miami. So respect to Jay Jettis for the honesty.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we were talking about this a little before. When we watched Kirk Cousins, of course, get eliminated to our team, the Giants, in the playoffs. It made me sad to see him lose on the show. Obviously, made me very happy to be sitting next to you watching him lose in real time. But what did you take away from sort of the end of his season, and what Kirk Cousins took away from it and even his check down on 4th and 12 at the end of the game?
Yeah, like you said, it was amazing that the film or the show was able to make me kind of sad that the Vikings lost to the New York Football Giants, which, like you said, when we were down in Nashville watching that was a fantastic afternoon. But, you're not following the Giants at all. You don't see Brian Dable, you don't see Saquon, you don't see Daniel Jones, you see Kirk Cousins. So I took away that this guy is the hungriest, maybe one of the hungriest guys in the NFL. What I love is he's a real lover of the game. He has this kind of secret Scooby-Doo wall that you push in, this bookshelf, and it opens up to his trophy room. And in there, he keeps all his game balls, and he keeps all his trophies and all his jerseys from high school, college, whatever. And there's a little in the middle, there's a little incline, right? And it's empty. There's a little cove, and there's a little shelf right there. And he said, the carpenter who built this, he built that for the Lombardi trophy. And I love that. I love that spirit from Kirk. Didn't win it last year, but let me tell you what, while we're on the topic, I'm high on Minnesota. I know that the flavor of the month is to say, wow, Detroit with a little bit of an improved defense, a better secondary, Dan Campbell coaching up the #1 offense in the league. We love Detroit. And Chicago, Justin Fields, he's the guy. They acquired DJ Moore. They got him some more weapons. They drafted some defenders. We love Chicago. But let me tell you why Minnesota is going to win this division again. First of all, what's the biggest question about this team? It's not their offense, right? First of all, Alexander Madison is ready to become one of the best running backs in football.
He has been for years.
Right. He is ready. The only guy I like more than him this season is Tony Pollard. Wide receivers. You have the best wide receiver in football by a long shot, Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison now on the other side, and TJ Hawkinson at tight end, ridiculous. And then flip over to the defensive side of the ball, and you got Brian Flores. Your biggest issue was your defense. You got defensive coordinator who has no business being a defensive coordinator. He should be a head coach in this league. Brian Flores is your defensive coordinator. You signed Byron Murphy to improve your secondary. And then one of their best draft picks in the third round, the Vikings took the cornerback out of USC, Mekhi Blackman. And he is going to contribute on the other side of Byron Murphy almost immediately. I love what Minnesota is building. And I could see Kirk putting that Lombardi trophy on the alcove in the not too distant future.
I don't know if I agree with you that much. I think Minnesota's going to win this division. I think the division is wide open. Obviously, no Aaron Rodgers anymore on the Packers. That division is just, it's wide open for anyone to win. And I think the Vikings are still the favorites. There's a reason, they won it last year, and everyone's saying it was, a fraudulent division win. They had a negative point differential. They weren't really a good team. Obviously, as soon as they lost to the Giants, everyone said they were exposed. They were never really good. But at the end of the day, they won the division. They won the division, I feel like, pretty easily. And I think they're going to win it again. Like you said, their defense is getting even better. Their offense shows no sign of slowing down. Madison is not a giant downgrade, if a downgrade at all, from Dalvin Cook.
Upgrade,
get even more speed with Jordan Addison. I think I'll say upgrade if he rushes for 1,000 yards this year. I think, but you're right. He definitely might be. And you get some speed with Jordan Addison. You're keeping TJ Hawkinson, the best receiver in the league, Justin Jefferson. It's a great team overall, and I think they win the division, but they're not winning the Lombardi. I'm sorry. There's just no way. Even if the NFC might be a little weak until you get to maybe the Eagles again, who in the draft just somehow get better every single year with their draft picks. But I don't see a path for the Vikings to win the Lombardi this year, even to get there.
Not this year. I agree. They will not win this year. I would say if the Vikings are going to win the Super Bowl, it'll be next year. I think this year, Philadelphia is going to run away with the NFC, but we have a lot of unfolding storylines in the NFC. I don't know what Dallas will look like a year from now. I don't know what San Francisco with their quarterback situation will look like a year from now. Philadelphia, say they do win the Super Bowl this year, it's hard to repeat. It's hard to go to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row, and that team is aging. That team does have a clock on it. You look at the offensive line especially, and that's one of their powers. That's what makes Jalen Hurts so strong. That's what's going to make a DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny so strong. Who knows where your Jason Kelsey's and Lane Johnsons and Jordan Mailatas are of the world in a couple of years. So I think the NFC might be wide open next year. I think it's Philadelphia's conference to lose, and then maybe behind that, your San Francisco's of the world. I know I said Seattle was going to win the division, but we'll see what happens with the quarterbacks there. But if the Vikings are going to win, it'll be next year in my mind. Now, quickly, before we have to move on. Mahomes, obviously amazing in this doc. Love his relationship with Andy Reid. Fights through that high ankle sprain, wins the Super Bowl. What does he need to do to become the GOAT?
I mean, I feel like that football might be the only sport where there's a pretty undebated GOAT in Tom Brady. It's pretty tough for Mahomes to top that, but he's just got to keep doing what he's doing. We knew he was a great competitor. Quarterback only further showed that he's an insane competitor. Fights through that ankle injury. I didn't know how bad it really was, but he obviously fights through it, and not just plays through it. He wins a Super Bowl through it. He's just got to keep doing what he's doing. He's gonna keep winning MVPs. He's gonna keep winning Super Bowls. He's gonna keep on being the best quarterback in the league. That's the path to becoming the GOAT. That's the trajectory. Yeah, he's got to just keep doing what he's doing, keep on winning, keep playing high level football, and if he's gonna have a chance of being the GOAT, that's how he's gonna do it. I don't know if he's going to. I think Tom Brady's got that pretty much on lock. But if anyone can do it in today's football game, it's Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know. Maybe in 15, 20 years, we're talking about another GOAT debate, another LeBron MJ GOAT debate. And hopefully on 4 quarters in 15, 20 years, we'll be able to have that debate between me and you.
Lock it in, Sam. That will happen. Brady, the undisputed GOAT. You're right. Maybe if you look at the 4 major sports, Wayne Gretzky, Brady, the undisputeds in the other 2 sports, there's a debate. But I'm going to say in the NFL very soon, there will be a debate. Patrick Mahomes is going to keep on winning. Let's go to the third quarter. So we've got these two big fixtures in the NBA who are on the market, quote unquote, or want to be on the market. We've talked about one a lot in Damian Lillard, that situation in Portland. And we've also got James Harden trying to push his way out of Philadelphia. Now, there's been rumors about each of them. Is Dame going to Miami? Is James Harden going to the Clippers? By the way, really what Sam and I have had problems with is also the indication of the teams you're going to. I'm going to get traded, and I'm going to get traded for this team. So essentially turning this into free agency, which I've heard a lot of people talking about. This is the new form of free agency, which is just crazy in my mind that a contract really means nothing. But neither teams have made significant headway on a deal. Sam, is there a chance that neither of these guys are traded, and will that change the trade landscape in the NBA if they don't?
Well, I think at least one of them is going to get traded, and I don't know if that's going to be to the team that they want, Lillard, the Heat, and I think Harden said he's going to find a way to push a trade to the Clippers. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and I've expressed my opinion. I think it's so stupid that the players are doing this, but I think at least one of them is going to get traded. And personally, if I were GM, I would tell them one of two things: either, sit here and show other teams that you're not going to play if everything doesn't go well, and make it publicly known. I was talking about this with my dad, and we were both saying, if I'm the GM, I make it publicly known that we would love to have Damian Lillard playing for our team. We would absolutely love for him to be on the court, and when he's ready to participate in practice and be a part of the team, he'll be back on the floor. But until then, until he doesn't participate with us and doesn't, show effort, he's going to sit there. Make it clear that this isn't a team thing. This isn't our team doesn't respect our players. Our team does respect our players. Make sure that players still want to come to their team, and it's not just looking like a bad culture. But we respect our players as long as our players respect us. And I would do that. And then I would also then, if they insist on a trade, I would ship them to Utah, Minnesota. I don't know. Where's your least desirable location to be sent? And I don't know, maybe the Trailblazers are looking for a nice big to pair with Scoot Henderson. I would take Karl Anthony Towns, send Dame back to Minnesota, and see where that goes. I see no reason why they can't just do that. And I'm sure Minnesota has a lot more to offer in return than the Heat do. And the Clippers probably don't have that much to offer in return, considering everything they gave up to get Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. So I would do the same thing there. I don't know. Maybe James Harden likes it down in Utah, and maybe Utah wants a nice scorer to replace Donovan Mitchell. But that's what I would do. I don't know. What do you think?
I love the pettiness. Send him to Siberia. You don't want to play for us. We're trying to build around you. Now, I did say on the last show that Damian Lillard is a bit of a special case because he's tried in Portland so many times. And this past free agency and draft has shown that they're moving in a different direction. So I don't think he's outlandish for demanding a trade. But yeah, we don't owe you Miami, Damian Lillard. Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd love to be traded to Miami too. It's an awesome city, great weather, and one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, the team that just won the Eastern Conference. Sure, I'd love to go to Miami. Not everybody gets in the fortuitous state as Kevin Durant, where when things are bad, he can sign with the team he just blew a 3-1 lead to, and then he can get traded when he's 10 games over 500 to the Phoenix Suns and be in one of the best situations in basketball. It doesn't always work out that way. I'm sorry. I wouldn't trade Damian Lillard to Siberia intentionally. Like, this is the most unpleasant location I could send you. That's why I'm trading you there. But I agree. Minnesota could offer a lot more than Miami could offer right now. Now, what I'll say on the Damian Lillard front is, from what I'm hearing, not a lot of teams are making offers. Miami might be the only crystallized offer right now, and it's just a matter of how many draft picks can they offer. And do they want a Tyler Hero or Duncan Robinson, or do they need to get a third team to trade them to that team and maybe get a player or two and a couple more draft picks? That's the biggest question for me on Damian Lillard right now. But if I'm Joe Cronin, I love that look. Hey, we don't want to move on from Damian Lillard, and he is still under contract with us. Now, unfortunately, if Damian Lillard decides to sit, we have to honor his decision, but we are jumping at the bit for the day that he comes back to practice and plays with Scoot Henderson and our building core. I would be fine if Joe Cronin did that too at this point. James Harden, very different debate in my mind. Daryl Morey doesn't want to trade the guy. He doesn't. And why should he? He's building a team that involves James Harden. And look, I know there is a lot of criticism around James Harden, but I think he is part of something really real here in Philadelphia. I look at what Morey's constructed with Embiid, with Harden. I love the insistence. We are not trading Tyrese Maxey. I don't care if it's prime Michael Jordan or prime LeBron. Tyrese Maxey is a guy we're building around. Tobias Harris and his claim that Philadelphia 76ers fans would trade him for a crumble cookie. This is a guy who can still hoop. I love what the Sixers are building. And ready for this, Sam? If James Harden stays with Philadelphia, they will win the NBA Finals in the next 2 years. Your thoughts?
I don't hate it. I was very set on Philly winning the East this year when we were going through our NBA playoff predictions on AMP. I was saying I thought that the Sixers had the best shot to come out of the East. I was excited for an Embiid versus Jokic finals showdown. Obviously, Jokic showed that he's probably the better center right now. But I still think they have it. And it's not like Embiid is, now that he won MVP, he's going to suck. He's in the middle of his prime. James Harden, very much still one of the best scorers in the league. Tyrese Maxey is only getting better. That whole roster is still there, and that's a good team. That's a team that was one game away from the Eastern Conference Finals, and they've been there for the last couple of years. They're right there. I don't think it's crazy, and the only thing I think is crazy is James Harden asking out of a situation on a team where you're one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference, and it's been like that. I feel like for years with the Nets. The Nets were the 4 seed in the East and then blew up their entire team. This kind of stuff is unprecedented. We've never seen a situation where a team that was the 4 or 5 seed in the East in the Eastern Conference blows up their entire team. I mean, that's why the Sixers had such an easy first round matchup this year. It's because they were facing a team with Mikal Bridges as their only real competent player, because the stars that were on that team that got them there were all traded. So I don't see a reason why Philly isn't a top contender. And I don't hate your take that they come out of the East this year or the next year if they stay together. Now, I want to go back to Portland. Let's say that Damian Lillard doesn't get traded, that they don't find enough from the Heat, that they don't send him to Minnesota or Siberia. What do you think about Damian Lillard and Scoot Henderson playing together? There's a lot of talk that they play the same position. They're not going to be in the same backcourt together. They can't play the two of them and Anthony Simons. Personally, I see no reason why Dame and Scoot can't play together and do pretty well. I think that having those two, having Simons either come off the bench or play together and play small, I think that's a pretty decent lineup. And I don't see a reason why Scoot can't learn from Damian Lillard and they can't coexist. There are teams that have had 2 guards that could both be ball dominant that people think doesn't work, and it goes out and they work together. Whether you think Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum was a successful pairing, they made the conference finals and they were pretty good together. Do you think they can coexist, Dame and Scoot, that they can play together on this team?
Yeah, I think they could be a high seed in the Western Conference together. And I don't think you would take Simons out of the starting lineup. I think you would play small ball because I love the way Simons is developing. I think he should be in the starting lineup. I think they could. Like you said, I don't think they will. I think Damian Lillard will get traded at this point, and I think Harden is going to stay. But if they were to stay on the same team, I would see their floor as maybe a 4 seed. I think they have a high ceiling, maybe a 2 seed ceiling, but I don't think they'd win a championship. I still wouldn't pick that Trailblazer team to win a championship. I still feel like they're a player away. When I look at a team with 2 star guards, I feel like there's always something that has to push them over the top, right? You look at a Golden State. They're the best example of a team who was led. Their 2 best players were their guards, but they had their Draymonds, they had their Iguodalas, they had their Durants eventually. And I'm not saying that Simons and Sharp and there's good guys on this team, but I still think that Portland, and maybe this is what they're acknowledging by drafting Scoot and not being opposed to the idea of moving on from Damian Lillard, is acknowledging that even if they could maintain Lillard with Scoot, which I think they like to do, because who knows what's going to happen, and talk about just revenue. you get a lot of eyes from just Scoot and a lot of eyes from just Lillard. So together, that's more eyes if my math checks out. So I think they'll try it from that standpoint. But if I'm looking at building a championship team, I still think they're missing something there, and kind of alludes to what you say is we're already talking about them playing small.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if their floor is a 4 seed. I think that might be a little much, but you're right. I mean, they can be a legitimate contender in the West. And granted, the West is packed. There are a lot of incredible teams, but that's the thing. It's packed, but it's not like we had a clear favorite in the West this year. The Nuggets were the 1 seed, but nobody thought nobody was really going into the playoffs saying, "Oh, okay, the Nuggets are gonna run through the playoffs like they did." It was the Nuggets, it was the Suns, it was before the season, it was the Mavs. It was looking at all these teams not really knowing who was gonna come out, and there's always the Lakers, there's the Clippers, especially if they get James Harden. But I don't think Portland is. I don't think it's completely crazy to say that Portland can get a playoff seed with like a decent playoff seed and compete with that team. And let's say they take this team, go to the trade deadline with these two. They're a fringe contender, maybe a play-in kind of team. Maybe they go out, go get a big another forward, and all of a sudden the team turns around and a team that was about to trade your star player is now back to being a contender. And all it takes is a little bit. And I bet you Damian Lillard returns to the team, and really is into it and says, all right, we're winning again. Let's go for it. Get me someone else, like he's been saying. Maybe Portland goes out, gets him someone else, and now you have a contender again without trading Damian Lillard. I don't think it's that crazy a thing to think that they could be a good team with Damian Lillard and Scoot Henderson playing together.
No, I fully agree. I think the only question is, can you repair that relationship with Dame? Can you get the guy to want to be there? And eventually, if you don't trade him, I would think he's going to play. I think Damian Lillard is a competitor who's not going to sit out a season or get into that. We haven't really seen that forced in the NBA like it's been forced in the NFL on a guy like Le'Veon Bell. And we saw how that worked out. He got his money, but at what cost, right?
I think Damian Lillard loves basketball too much to sit out for a
Oh,
season. I think there's just no way he'd do it, no matter what team he's on. He loves basketball too much to say that he's not going to play. And like you said, it happens in the NFL sometimes. People threaten it. It doesn't really happen like that in the NBA, and I don't think it will.
nope. But I still think it's more likely than not, out of these two guys we're looking at, that Damian Lillard will be traded. Now, to circle back to Harden, here's why Philadelphia will win a championship in the next 2 seasons. They were a Doc Rivers away from coming out of the East, in my mind. Up 3-2, completely blew it. And then I think they would have beaten Miami. I really like the way they matched up against them. So I think they would have come out of the East, and they would have put up a better competition against the Nuggets. We talk about all the time, the Lakers in those 4 games against the Nuggets, all 4 games came down to the wire, and they were a good LeBron James performance away from winning some of those games. I think the Sixers have enough guys to have exploited some of those matchups and won some of those games. I still think it was the Nuggets here, don't get me wrong. But I look at the way the Philadelphia 76ers are constructed now. They bring in Nick Nurse, and something that Nick Nurse, first of all, I love the guy as a coach, and something that Nick Nurse said is, I'm looking to attack the weakest matchup every night. And that's why I want to accumulate a lot of stars on this team. And like we said, rattle them off. Harden, Embiid, Maxey, and then to a lesser degree, Tobias Harris are all guys who could go off offensively on any night if you're attacking a weak matchup. Then, okay, look at the bench of this team. I look at some of the role players on this team. Patrick Beverly, PJ Tucker, D'Anthony Melton. I'm looking at guys who could really contribute off the bench and be these kind of role players that like a Bruce Brown was in Denver. And then talk about a shooter, that kind of shooter that always annoys you in the playoffs, Mac McClung. Love that pick. I think Philadelphia right on track to win. And here's something else I'll say, Sam, and tell me if I'm crazy. Philadelphia next season could have 3 out of the 4 major championships. Phillies, Eagles, and Sixers. I could see them winning 3 out of 4. Sorry, Flyers.
I mean, we talked about how painful a year it was for Philly sports fans, with with the Phillies losing in the World Series and the Eagles losing in the Super Bowl and the Sixers blowing this 3-2 lead. And I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. Frankly, I don't know if they get one, but I think they're gonna be there. I mean, they're gonna be in the the equivalent of the semifinals in probably at least two of the sports. And listen, I'll say this: it's a great time to be a Philadelphia sports fan. As much as that pains me to say, as a New York sports fan, Philly's got it all going for them right now. And I miss the days where New York had it all going, where we could have, the Yankees and the Knicks and the Giants and those are my teams, but even the Jets and the Mets and not the Nets. The Nets don't count as a New York sports team to me. I'm sorry, they never will. But it's tough. But I think you're right. I think Philly. I don't think they're going to win three of the four. I don't think they're going to win two out of the four. I think maybe they win one, but I think they're going to be in the semifinals in at least two, if not three, of the major sports.
I could see a scenario. You talk about that great parking lot that Philadelphia has with all their stadiums. You go to Citizens Bank in October, and Bryce Harper is holding up that World Series trophy, and then you go over. It won't be at the Link. Where's the Super Bowl this year? Maybe Vegas? You go wherever it is, you see Jalen Hurts hoisting the Lombardi in February, and then June over at Wells Fargo, Embiid kissing the Larry O'Brien trophy. Just watch out. Just watch out. It is a great time to be a Philadelphia sports fan. But you know what it's also a great time for, Sam? It's a great time to be a fantasy.
Sounds like a great time for fantasy
Oh my
football.
God. It's always a great time for fantasy football. So let's go to the fourth quarter. It's never too early to start, guys. That's what I would say. If you've been struggling with your league for the last couple of years, if you're like me, who always just hypes himself up when it comes to fantasy and then falls flat, and it's an embarrassing experience. My family league, especially, which there's been so much on the line, a lot of trash talk, a great trophy. And I don't think I've ever finished above 500. It's that embarrassing. So I've started early. I've started mock drafting, and I think I've got some insight at this point. Sam, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I think I'm not gonna lie, I usually tend to wait till later on to start preparing. But this year I've started looking a little more. I've started getting into it a little earlier. I'm excited. I think I can't remember the last time I've been this excited for a football season, for a fantasy football season in a while. So I've started doing my research already. I started a couple weeks ago. I feel good. I have some guys I like a lot going into this year, some guys that I don't like, and I don't know. I feel like this year might be a little bit of a transition year almost, where a lot of the guys that have been high picks the last couple of years, we don't really know. With Ezekiel Elliott not being as high a pick, Dalvin Cook, but being released from the Vikings, things like that. I feel like there are a lot of guys who we don't know that much about that have been just kind of perennial top picks. So I feel like this is going to be a really interesting year for fantasy football.
Yeah, there's a lot of rookies who are exciting. Like you said, there are guys who are not the same guys that we used to know, and that's always an evaluation. And it's always so tempting when you see a big time name to make that dive. And sometimes when you see, the wide receiver 2 on Jacksonville is supposed to be good this year, it's not as sexy of a pick. Although Jacksonville's becoming more of a sexier location, and at there I'd be referring to Christian Kirk, who's legit for sure in fantasy. But sometimes about making those disciplined picks as well. And it's also about being bold. The thing that really burned me last year was my belief in Javonte Williams. And
Yeah.
I look back on that and I don't say it was a mistake by me. He got hurt, and B, I didn't know Nathaniel Hackett was the worst coach to ever grace the NFL field. I think Javonte Williams, by the way, if we want to throw out a name early who's being undervalued at his ADP, I think Javonte Williams, the biggest question is, when is he going to come back from injury? But if he can come back within the first 4 weeks of the season, I think Javonte Williams' ADP is ridiculously low for a kind of gadget offense with Sean Payton, where he could be used as like an Alvin Kamara type.
You beat me. That was one of the first names I was going to bring up. You beat me too, because I did the same thing last year. I fell victim to the Javonte Williams curse. I thought I had and you know what? My team was really good last year. I did well, but if I had Javonte Williams too, that
Uh,
that team becomes even better. Maybe we're talking about another fantasy football championship for me. But no, I think the goal is for him to be, healthy enough by training camp, hopefully healthy early in the season, maybe by week 1 if they can get him back for then. So we're talking about a guy that a year ago was a second, third round pick in most fantasy drafts. The year before, he showed why he was how talented a player he is. If he gets back to being healthy, there's no reason why he shouldn't be, valued at a second, third round running back again. Maybe you don't pick him as high. Maybe he's a fourth round guy this year because you don't know coming off an injury, but it's not like the talent's not there. He's the same running back he was, maybe a tiny bit hampered by this injury, but I see no reason why he should be, valued as low as he is among the other running backs right now.
I couldn't agree more. Everybody wants to forget. This guy was literally the favorite to lead the NFL in rushing last year. That's how high people were on the guy. And I took him over Saquon Barkley, something I was mocked by my friends for, and it hurt, and it was the wrong choice for sure. But again, in the right offense, and Sean Payton is the right offense, and the guy's fully healthy. Melvin Gordon's not on the team anymore. Who's he competing for touches for? P. Ryan? P. Ryan's the only guy on this.
Yeah, he's the guy there. As long as he's playing, he's the guy.
I agree. Javonte is a great pick. I also want to circle back. We were talking about him in the Vikings part of the segment, but Alexander Madison, he's undervalued too. I don't know where he's going in some of my mocks. Maybe like the fifth or sixth round. I think Alexander Madison has top 5 running back upside.
Yeah, I think he definitely does. I mean, I've had Dalvin Cook actually both of the last 2 years in my main league, and it's worked out decently well. I was happy with Dalvin Cook, but what I made sure I did in both of those drafts is I went 2 rounds earlier than I thought he might go, and I picked Alexander Madison and I stashed him on my bench the entire year. And there were weeks where I genuinely believed where Dalvin Cook would get hurt and he'd miss a week, and then the next week he'd be questionable up until game time. I was hoping that Dalvin Cook didn't play because I didn't want to have to choose, play Dalvin Cook. Maybe he gets 13 carries and Madison gets 8. I didn't want to have to play that, injury riddled Dalvin Cook. I just wanted him to sit so I could play a healthy Alexander Madison because he was arguably as good. And I think now that Madison's not competing with Dalvin Cook for touches, I mean, he's shown the Vikings for years that when Dalvin Cook isn't playing, he is just as good a running back, and they can feed him the ball and give him 25 carries a game and be comfortable that they're not losing anything. So now that they don't have Dalvin Cook, Madison's the guy there. And I don't get it. He's being picked late, like you said, late-ish. I feel like he should be getting picked closer to where Dalvin Cook was the last 2 years as a first-round pick than where he is now as more of a fifth, sixth round pick. I mean, don't you agree?
He's a 3 down back now, and
Yeah.
he's been great in terms of efficiency. Always. Always. Averaging upward 4 or 5 yards a carry. I think it makes no sense that Madison. I fully expected when I first opened up my Yahoo mock draft. I'm a big Yahoo guy, by the way. I don't know. Are you an ESPN guy?
I'm ESPN or I'm an NFL fantasy guy, actually.
Oh my gosh. Are
I
you in
know.
2008? What's going on here?
I know. Listen, my league's used it for almost a decade now, so we've kind of just stuck with it. But more so an ESPN or NFL guy than Yahoo. I'm not a huge Yahoo fan.
Yahoo is a fantastic interface. I would try it. Have you done Sleeper?
I've seen everyone on Sleeper, and I want to get into it because it looks legit. It looks like a great site. I just haven't had a league that's wanted to use Sleeper yet. But I mean, listen, I'm assuming we're going to be in a league together this
We
year.
will be. Let's do a sleep. We'll do a sleeper league.
Deal.
For the frat, 100%. Here's a little statement for you. The number 1 player in fantasy football this year will be Tony Pollard.
I don't hate it. He's gonna be. I had him last year. What sucked is I had him last year, and every single week I would play him when he did so, and I would bench him when he went for 35 points. But now that Zeke isn't there, I mean, you want to talk about a 3 down back? That's Tony Pollard, a 3 down back with incredible efficiency. He's going for 5 yards a carry. He's catching 7 passes. He's incredible. Talk about a gadget back. He can do everything. And Dallas every year has an incredible offense. So I see no reason why that's not going to be the same this year. He does everything. I'm not going to pick Pollard as my number one running back, but I mean, he could be second round material easily, early second round. I'm going to try and get Tony Pollard in all of my leagues if I can, because I think, I mean, I would take him ahead of Derrick Henry. I think I would take him ahead of Nick Chubb. I think he has way more upside. And when I'm drafting for upside, especially, Pollard isn't a later rounds guy, but I mean, I'll give you a peek at my strategy. My strategy is to go, take your running backs, your receivers, fill out your positions. And then when you get to the bench, pure upside. I want, if I could hit one of my 6 bench spots on someone that's going to end up being a top 15, top 20 at their position, I'm very happy with my draft.
Yeah, I think we have the same mindset. When I go to the bench, I don't look for, oh, let me stash Michael Thomas on my bench for the 5th year in a row. I'm looking for rookies. I'd rather take a Jalen Hyatt over a Michael Thomas, because those are the guys that get big. You talk about rookies, because if you were thinking from a rookie mindset, go back to Tennessee 6 years ago. Who was a rookie coming out of Tennessee? Alvin Kamara. And do you know what I did? I traded back in the day, naive little me. I traded Alvin Kamara for Adrian Peterson right before Kamara broke out. And Adrian Peterson was a Cardinal. It was awful. So I've learned from that day, never to trade the upside guys. And talk about another upside guy who will be a 3-down back and used significantly in the passing game in a really good offense. And he's a rookie, Jahmyr Gibbs. I like him. I like him maybe more than Bijan.
What's funny is you said that opening, and I thought you were going to say Bijan. That's what I thought you were going with, and you had me a little at the great system. But I mean, I was gonna say this. I mean, Gibbs is going to be great, but I was going to ask you: is Bijan Robinson the best rookie running back since Saquon Barkley? I mean, I think he's going to go where Barkley was going first round in 2018 when he was a rookie. Robinson's probably going to go first, second round this year. He's as electric as Barkley was coming out of college. I mean, how many running backs are you taking ahead of him? Maybe 4, 5. He's got all the tools. I think we could be looking at a number 1 running back in fantasy here too.
I agree. I'm just not as confident in Atlanta, and I'm just not sure if they're going to be playing from behind a lot. I just don't know the quarterback, and that's what scares me. You look at rookie running backs who have been drafted in the first round lately. I'm trying to think. You go back, Zeke Elliott was a really high pick, and for the right reason. He was perfect. Money at Ohio State, coming into a good system in Dallas. Now, of course, hindsight is 2020 because he was working with Dak Prescott, right? Brand new quarterback. But I mean, at that point, Romo could have come back. They just said, forget it. Prescott's too good. So Zeke was great his rookie year. And then you're right. Then Saquon was going really high, and he was awesome his rookie year. I think that Bijan will have a fantasy season on the level of those two guys. I really do believe in what Bijan Robinson has. Again, why I would probably be happier taking a Jahmyr Gibbs is just because I think the offense is more established at this point. But talk about running backs over Bijan. Who are you taking over Bijan? Maybe CMC?
I think CMC, Eckler, maybe Barkley, if you believe that he's going to stay healthy, and assuming he's going to play week 1, because that's a thing now that I'm worrying about as a Giants fan. But them and maybe if you believe in the resurgence of Jonathan Taylor, but other than that, Robinson's there. He's your guy.
I think almost the best thing, Sam, in this draft would be to have a late pick. So I mock in 12 teams because I usually play mostly 12-team leagues. I think that's the best format. Because 10, everybody has a super team, and 14, everybody's starting the Bills' 4th receiver. So, you want to find the happy medium there. But, man, if you got 12 and 13, you could do an easy thing like a Tony Pollard, Stephon Diggs turnaround or something like that. Who, by the way, you're not hearing Diggs all that much just because he's unsatisfied with the team. I'm telling you, everybody's sleeping on the Bills. Stephon Diggs will be another top 3 receiver in fantasy football this year.
Yeah, and another receiver we've talked about him a lot, but Calvin Ridley, he's going to be a guy. People forget that before he got suspended, on a team with the Falcons, he broke out with Julio Jones as the number one receiver on that team. And then he was the number one. He was great. Now he's on an offense with Trevor Lawrence, who broke out last year. They're looking like a legitimately good offense, and Ridley's still in his prime. It's not like he missed a season because of injury. He missed a season because he was suspended for gambling. He's still in his prime. He's still as good as ever, I would assume. He's got a great quarterback. I think Calvin Ridley, I don't know where he's getting picked right now, but I would get him in. If I get him in the third round, I'd be thrilled.
You could with his ADP right now, I think. And what's weird is it depends what platform you're on. Because, for example, I'm mock drafting on different things right now, because I think where I really got burned last year is I was only mock drafting on Yahoo, and then I got the ESPN rankings. I was like, whoa. And then you're almost influenced to do different things, right? Because if Saquon's up here on one and Saquon's valued in the third round on ESPN, you feel weird taking Saquon in the first round. So I'm very much trying to just stick to my rankings. But Calvin Ridley as a third, fourth round pick this year would be fantastic. It's still a risk, right? Because as good as the guy is, he's been away from football for, a year, right? We saw what that did to Deshaun Watson last year. Not saying it's the same situation, but you got to see how the guy's going to adjust. But I love Calvin Ridley. Now, quickly, before we have to wrap up, what's your quarterback strategy this year?
I've always been a late quarterback kind of guy. There have been years where I've stumbled into Lamar Jackson in like the fifth round, and I got to take him. But I always go in with the thought of I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna sit. Quarterback, it's just too big a position. Trevor Lawrence is. I'm super high on him, and he's probably 8, 9, 10th quarterback off the board. I don't want to take Justin Fields. I don't love a guy who is a great runner, but I don't really trust with his arm. I would want someone who can do both. I don't want to take one of the top 3, 4 guys off the board. I'm looking at the Trevor Lawrence, the Herbert, because I think Herbert's kind of starting to drop a little. I still think he's going to be incredible. But I want to ask you a question, because this is something I've been thinking about going into fantasy football. What are your thoughts on the fact that on me saying I don't want to leave the first round without Travis Kelce? Because
I love it.
Because I am so sick of every single year. If you don't get Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, or I don't know, Darren Waller, George Kittle, I am so many times last year. My tight ends, I started. Who did I start? I had Zach Ertz last year. It was great, and then he got hurt, and then it was Pat Fryermuth and Jesus, I don't even remember who I started. There were zeros and ones and twos at my tight end spot, 3 points. I was so sick of it. I hate it. Kelce just gives you such a positional advantage over everyone. And you can get an 11th round guy or a waiver wire running back who's going to be better than someone you picked in the third round. It's not the case with tight end. What do you think?
Yeah. Last year, I was so anti-Kelce. I said, this is the cliff year. I pulled the Max Kellerman with Brady. I said, this is the cliff year. Fade Travis Kelce. And people who took him in the second round, I said, you're ridiculous. Kelce is in a league of his own. First of all, the Chiefs responded by not having a wide receiver one and finding a way to win the Super Bowl by saying, we'll just do the same thing again. Kelce is the wide receiver one there, and it gives you such a positional advantage, because I wouldn't even rank tight ends like tight end 1, tight end 2, put them in tiers, right? Kelce is the only S-tier tight end in fantasy football. Everybody else, you listed your Kittle, Mark Andrews, those guys are A-tier. There is nobody in Travis Kelce's tier. I could argue in every other position. You say Justin Jefferson's the best receiver. Well, I would still put Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs probably in the same production tier as Justin Jefferson. Nobody is in the same production tier as Travis Kelce. And Sam, if I have picked 6 or lower, I'm 100% looking to take Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I would argue that there isn't even anyone in the tier below Kelce. I would say it's Kelce, empty tier, and then everyone else. He's so much better than everyone else. I swear, every single year I play a team, week 5, I'll come across a team that has Travis Kelce, and I'll be looking, and I'll be like, oh man, this team isn't that good. And then I'll get to Kelce, and I'll say, oh my God, this team is insane. They have Kelce, they have a good quarterback, they have 2-star running backs. The team with Kelce is just the deepest team every single year, because there's not that hole at tight end. It's Kelsey's the only guy who you could put a tight end and know he's going to do well for you this week. Maybe he'll have 11-point week and you're upset. If I got 11 points for my tight end after week 7 last year, I would have been ecstatic. You would have seen me in my room jumping for joy if I got more than 11 points for my tight end. He's so good, and I'm sick of doing this every year where I say, he's not going to be that good. It's not really worth it. Every year I get scared to do it in the draft because you pick a tight end earlier. It's a dangerous move. It's not anymore. It's if you think of it as getting to start a top 5 receiver at tight end, why would you not do it? It's so good. It literally feels like cheating. And I don't want to leave my draft without Kelsey again. I would, if you play in a league where you can trade picks, I would trade down from pick 2 overall to pick 8 overall and take Kelsey and then get whatever his second round pick is. I think it's a steal.
Kelsey's the guy to take. If you escape the first round with Kelsey, you are off to a good start. Well, that is going to do it for 4 quarters today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed listening as much as Sam and I enjoyed talking. Really good time. As always, Sam, we'll be back on AMP Monday and Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, and then more YouTube coming up as well. That's Sam. I'm Jonah saying have a fantastic day. We'll be back with you soon.